We're now going to look at shapes and the shape combiner. I have a couple of clusters on here. I'm now going to do a bit of shape modeling. Most importantly, I need to go into shape modeling mode if I'm going to start to do some deformers or move components in this case. So now my move component has gone into shape modeling. With my cluster selected, I'm now going to store this shape. I'm just going to call it left. If I put this back to 0, you notice the move components have actually been added here and not taken away. That's because I haven't yet inserted the source and instantiated these onto the timeline. I can always delete those because I've stored the information while I was in shape modeling mode. If I go and add this, store that shape, call it back, I'm now ready to instantiate them. So I still have my move component, but if I now instantiate the clip, you notice it gets blown away and puts inside the shape combiner. In addition, the shape combiner has added this clip because it relates to a cluster. Anytime animation is done, if it's done on a cluster, it will add two sliders. So if I add now the left clip, like so, that now is added to the shape combiner. The whole object can be defined as a shape as well, and that's why we'll have a single slider for the whole object. So to have a look at this, we now have this type of effect. Well, why is it doing it? What it's actually doing is two things. One is normalizing the overlap weights. By default, when there is nothing happening, it's taking the original shape, which is flat. When I have the clip like this, it's looking at all of the clusters inside here and normalizing their weight in the overlap. If this is taken off, it has become additive. So flat and that equals that. So the same thing on this side. So what happens if I put them together? Well, because they're additive, where they overlap, we get 2 plus 2. With each of these values 2 units high. So 2 plus 2 equals the 4. So perhaps in this case, there we go, we can normalize the weights when they overlap. Normalize overlap weights. Normalizing the cluster weights is going to take the values and divide them. There we go, so they're now down to 1 side here. With these sliders on, I can of course reduce the influence. So in this case, I have normalized the overlap weights, but I've now reduced the left weight to 0. Additive, flat and 2 equals 2. Normalized, the flat cluster of left together with right, or back should I say, equals this half. This is important to understand because if we were to do some shape animation on the whole object, so if I here store the shape on the whole object, and I'll call this flat, and we insert that, another couple of sliders get added because the whole object is in fact defined as a cluster, just as these are. So for every cluster which has a shape instantiated on the mixer, you have 2 sliders, the initial weight as well as the overlap weight. We can normalize these overlaps or the entire clusters themselves. So now the overlap weights are considering all of these clusters. So the shape weight itself has no influence, but the overlap weight certainly does. So now, if we were to add the flat combination, you can see what it's trying to do. If we would take it off, we go back to our original settings. The same thing as if we're using, say, a flat clip as something to blend against. If I just put some preset weights, just a Gaussian in out here. Oops, I did it the wrong way around. We can have a look now and see that over time they're going from one state to the other. So with these two together at their maximum height, they are still being normalized. So we might need to keyframe over time the overlap weight. The majority of the times, shape animation will be done on the whole object. When isolating clusters, it is important to understand not only the overlap weights, but the contribution that these sliders make, so that these can be keyframed over time to allow for this type of normalized effect. I could always do some animation on this overlap weight. And change that over time. Using the mixer, I could actually store that as a mark parameter and just call it overlap. And inside here, I could even use that to control the influence over time. So where I want the overlap, T, and down again. So this is just an animatable property which can be keyframed, put onto the mixer in combination.